and a much smaller readership. So the letter format alone was worrying, as was the fact of the long gap between this and the other documents, suggesting that someone had been curating my output for years and selecting the most combustible material. The minutes ticked past. My concerns mounted. While those around the table continued to chew over the leaks already identified, one of my private office team, at her desk immediately outside my office, scrolled through the document archive. I heard the photocopier whirring before she emerged with a sheaf of copies in her hand. The remaining leak was a confidential letter from me to Mark Sedwell, Cabinet Secretary and National Security Advisor, dating back to mid-2017. This had been written as input for a top-level discussion of UK-US relations, some 6 months into the new US administration. My mood sank. This was really bad. The National Security Council had been created by David Cameron and William Hague when the coalition government took office in 2010, in part as a reaction to claims that the previous government had decided to go to war in Iraq without proper consultation of senior cabinet ministers. As National Security Advisor from 2012 to 2015, I had organised its work. So when I wrote that letter in 2017, I had known what was required: a frank, unvarnished assessment of the Trump administration 7 months into office. The letter had provided exactly that. Given its sensitivity, it had gone to a very small number of people in Whitehall. It had described the infighting inside the White House, chronicled daily by the US media drawing on dozens of sources inside the building. It had summarized the policy missteps, especially the executive orders banning travel from several Muslim countries, a measure quickly blocked in the US courts. It had highlighted the damaged relationships with NATO allies in the wake of President Trump picking fights with many of them at a NATO summit, as well as hinting that he didn't agree with the cornerstone of the alliance, Article 5, which states that an attack on one is an attack on all. And it had assessed the growing cloud of scandal swirling around the administration, centered on accusations of collusion between the Trump campaign and agents of the Russian state. The letter had also, however, highlighted his killer instinct for the vulnerabilities of his opponents, his Teflon qualities, and his extraordinary empathy with his political base, who treated him less as a politician, more as a messiah. But I immediately doubted that these more positive comments would be given any prominence in the media. I remembered that one of my predecessors, my close friend Nigel Scheinwald, had gone through a comparable experience when a less than totally flattering letter he had written about Barack Obama's qualities as a presidential candidate had leaked to a different newspaper. Nigel had survived. Obama's team had declined to respond to the leak. Was there any chance that the Trump White House might behave similarly? I had my doubts. I returned briefly to the residence over lunchtime for a meeting with a personal trainer with whom I was signing up, a specialist in dealing with chronic back pain. We agreed a schedule of appointments through to November, though I warned her, I hoped in jest, that I might be out on the street by Monday. She looked bemused. The rest of the day was a rolling series of meetings. Sometimes stories take the government by surprise, but when there is some warning, the media machine swings into preemptive action. The aim is to produce a succinct, objective, calm, and factually correct text which presents government policy in the best possible light, and to which everyone sticks, whether sitting in number 10, a Whitehall outpost, or an embassy thousands of miles away. And if, as is usually the case with stories involving the Foreign Office, another country is involved, the Holy Grail is a press line which the relevant foreign government has also agreed to use. So my team talked to London and agreed some press lines. My media team telephoned the White House to warn them of the impending story. We had good relations with the White House press office, and they responded reassuringly, promising that they wouldn't react and would try to play the whole thing down. I then phoned the White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, who was a good friend, to tip him off personally on what was about to unfold. Mick, too, was reassuring. This stuff happens to us every day. But he added ominously, and as it turned out, presciently, that he couldn't predict how the president would react.